can open our Architectural Board of Review agenda for Tuesday, February 2nd of 2022. Let's start with a roll call, please.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and start the roll call. We have Chair Moore.
Here.
Vice Chair Six.
Here.
Board Member Anderson.
Here.
Board Member Block.
Here.
Board Member Noon.
Here.
Board Member Olson.
Here.
And Board Member Whalen.
And here.
All right, we have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on to public comment. We open public comment. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not on today's agenda. You can follow the instructions on screen that will alert staff that you would like to make a comment. Do we have anybody?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So we did receive general written correspondence from Abby Fregosa, which was regarding an item on East Coda Street and is not on today's agenda. And I don't see any hands raised for general public comment, so I'll turn it over back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. We close public comment and go on to approval of the minutes for February 7th. We have those up. Apologize, we've got some construction next door, so you might hear some background noise.
Move we accept as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? No? Okay, let's take a vote.
All right, Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Block.
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't at the meeting.
All right, thank you. Board Member Noon,
I'll also abstain since I wasn't at the meeting.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you. Now moving on to what's next down there. Okay, consent calendar for February 14th. You can have those up.
Thank you, Chair Moore. For February 14th consent, we had item A, 1322 San Andreas Street. This was for a carport. This received project design and final approval as submitted. And then the second item was a review after final at the 1200 block of Las Positas Road. The review after final was requested for a landscape plan, just to basically clarify mitigation planting areas. And that also received approval of review after final as submitted. And that was for the February 14th minutes.
Move for accept as presented.
I'll second that.
So first by Olson, second by Vice Chair Six. Any discussion? No, let's vote.
All right, Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Block,
I will abstain on this motion as well, please.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, and then today, I believe is next.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Unfortunately, today we did not make findings for one of the items, so I want to postpone those minutes until the next full board agenda. So we do not have those today.
I see. Is it something we can reopen now, or do we have to notice it?
No, I think just as a formality, and it would also be easier just to postpone it till the next meeting. So I don't want to reopen an item. We were kind of, yeah, don't want to.
All right. All right, then we'll take care of those next time around. Okay. Any announcements, requests by applicants for continuous withdrawals, future agenda items, or appeals? Go ahead.
I'll be stepping down for the first item today.
Alrighty, thank you.
Uh,
Any, go ahead.
Chair Moore, I'll have to step out for the last item today. I have a conflict.
Okay,
And part of my interruption, if everybody could explain why they have to recuse themselves and just to be a little bit more explicit, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. I'm stepping down for item 1 because I am the applicant for that project.
okay,
And I'm stepping down because of the last item is here, project here at the office.
okay, thank you. Any subcommittee reports? No? Okay, well, let's move on from general business. If we can. To item number 1. Which is 315, yeah, we're good to go. So item number 1 is 414 West Cannon Perdido Street. This is a new item for concept review. The proposed project is a 2-story, 2-unit residential building using the AD program. Project includes 2 932 square foot bedroom units. The proposed density on the 3,529 square foot lot is 25 units per acre. The proposal also includes 2 covered parking spaces and a 448 square foot garage. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. The project requires compliance with the compatibility findings and the urban design guidelines. Okay. Do we have our applicant with us?
Well, I think Alan McLeod's supposed to be presenting.
I've just promoted Mr. McLeod, so we'll give him a second to hop on in.
Good afternoon.
Okay, welcome. If you could introduce yourself and
I,
walk us through your project, and note we try to limit our presentation time to 15 minutes.
sure.
So we, Mr. Russell will give you some reminders as we get close to that. So go ahead.
Chair, Moore, members of the board, thank you for taking the time to look at this project with us today. We're at 414 West Cannon Perdido Street. If you'd like to zoom into the little aerial photograph. The site is 3,929 square feet, so it's a pretty small lot, located one house from the freeway off-ramp. If we go to the next sheet, please. Just a current survey of the property. Right now, it's an existing open lot. There's a couple of fruit trees on the lot and an existing curb cut. So if we go to the next slide. So as we approach this 2-unit development, obviously neighborhood context has been at the forefront of our thought process. So the top photos are the homes and the site as it relates to that side, the north side of the street. The houses on the south side of the street, all single family residences. The interesting thing to note is all the sites are raised off the existing street by about 2.5 to 3 feet. And then all the floor finishes are another 3 feet above that. They all sit with current porches. So our approach to a portion of the neighborhood context is to really look at the material palette that was used within this block and to the east. So can we go to sheet 1.02 next, please? So we did an analysis on the existing single-story homes in the neighborhood and in the existing two-story and apartment buildings in relationship to the context to look at how these larger structures sit next to the smaller, older structures. And if we concentrate on the image to the large map to the right-hand side, we can start to see the two-story analysis where we've got two-story homes located up against a lot of the single stories, especially prominent in the block to the east of where we're located. If we can go back to now sheet 1.00. So a full site analysis of opportunities and constraints as an opportunity and constraints diagram from the site. Obviously, a relatively small site with all our setbacks located on it. There's an opportunity for a mountain view from the second story of anything that was proposed. Obviously, we're taking care of light as it relates to morning sun, afternoon sun penetration into the building. As it relates to our neighbors. But a big factor in the direction that was driven was the highway noise factor that we're going to have to contend with also. If we go to the next sheet. So as we all know, form follows parking. So we did a large number of studies to look at how we could get the two parking spaces to work the most efficiently on the site. And we've ended up with a single curb cut, two-car garage as a carport that is on the easterly side of the property. And then the two units at the ground floor from a strategy was to use the lower level as a buffer that we come up and over. So from a site strategy, we have open space, our open space requirement to the rear of the property, limiting the parking and transversing through the site for the car. So that's as close to the property line as we could be with the garage. And then to accommodate the balance of the open space as a roof deck above. There's a plan, obviously it's not going to be reviewed today, but for an ADU to the rear of the site to make it the 3 units. Entry, we studied a lot of different options with entry into the building, and it was determined most efficient from a sound and livability standpoint to keep the quiet side of the house to the west and let the eastern portion open up to the view and to the street. So if we go to the next, and the next one. So from a site planning layout on the drawing on the right, the ground floor plan, we can start to see the way that it's been laid out is a 2-car garage with storage, and then a trash enclosure, bikes and everything located to the rear of that garage so that we can hide and screen that from the street, having a walkway on the eastern side of the property. Entry into the units are on the western side with a mirrored plan from each other. Come in, we do a single bedroom downstairs with a bathroom and mechanical laundry. Come up a flight of stairs into the main living space, which would then obviously open to the east to the mountain view and to the street from this street portion of the unit, and then simply a second bedroom, again located on the western portion as a buffer from a livability standpoint from the noise factor. And then we would continue to the roof, next sheet, through a skylighted roof access where we would handle the photovoltaic array, and then up to a roof deck as a a slightly taller element. So the idea was that we'd keep the bedroom wings to a minimum plate height, create a little volume in the living side of the house that opens up and helps with the massing of the building to break up that massing as we address the street elevations and as we wrap around. So if we go to the elevations. The elevation palette, taking from the neighborhood, we wanted to do a wood siding, probably a naturalized wood siding, and a plaster wall from the street, which can be seen in that bottom lower elevation. We are at this stage, the idea was to carry that wood element as a screen that continues up as a handrail for the roof deck portion of it. So that would go from a solid below and then staggered to a open railing system above. And the little section on the left-hand side just shows the minimum volumes that we're working with a 8-foot plate for that lower room, 8-foot plate to the upper bedroom, and then a 10-foot plate just to give that living area a little bit more volume because these units are fairly small. I think that's pretty much it. I think we have the other elevations on the next sheet. We have the entry elevation and the rear elevation. In the back rear elevation, we can see the screening for bikes and trash in that lower level, which is all overhung. That opens, that whole area then opens to that outdoor living space. And then the upper level is just the entry elevation. Very quiet, no windows proposed on that elevation. And I think that concludes our presentation. Happy to answer any questions. Materials. Obviously, we discussed just a wood siding at the upper level, off-white plaster to the plaster portion of the volume, and then we were looking at doing a exposed block garage base.
Okay.
Okay.
If that concludes your presentation,
Happy to answer any questions.
we can move on to public comment. Is there anybody in the public who would like to address the board regarding this project? You can follow instructions on screen and alert the staff that you would like to ask or like to make a comment. Do we have anybody out there?
Thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So if any member of the public would like to speak on item 1, please raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak and I will call on you. All right, so at this time, I don't see any hands raised and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item. So I'll turn it over back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll close public comment and go to questions from the board. Who would like to start? Anybody?
Chair Moore,
Go ahead, Mr. Six.
I just have two small questions. One, if we go to the street elevation. Next sheet. Well, you can see it here. There seems to be a conflict between the solar line for ordinance for the property to the down sheet. Yeah, right there. There seems to be a conflict with solar ordinance limits and the party to the east. Can you explain that?
So the idea, obviously we have two choices. We could go with a cable rail and meet the solar ordinance, or we could do something a little more architectural and integrate it into the screen. So at this stage, we're looking for some direction from you. I would prefer, obviously, to have the wood siding run up, and it would become transparent to meet the 4-inch requirement. The other option is to create the parapet at the ordinance height and go with a cable rail above, which would be would be less preferable, I believe.
All right, then just one ever minor, if we go to the site plan, the floor plans, right here, yes. And here, the trash is aligned with the rear of the garage and very present to the open living area, but yet on your elevations of the rear, there is a wall. Can we go to the rear elevation of that? Bingo. That lower one seems to be a solid wall. I don't see how the trash is accessed in that regard if there's a single depth of trash bins.
The idea would be that it would be probably a screen wall that is you can reach over, and then the trash could be pulled out from one end on trash day. So that would be stacked.
Okay, those are my questions.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Whalen?
Thank you, Chair Moore. First for staff, are we reviewing the AUD, the third building on the site plan?
To Board Member Whalen, no. As it's proposed as future, there's no plans set for us to review. So that answer would be no.
All right then. And then for the applicant, are there any of the existing trees that are to be retained?
I believe that there's one large avocado and one other fruit tree, and I believe both of those will be replaced with a couple of new trees to help buffer with the neighbor.
So I'm confused. You're removing and replacing them, or they're to be retained?
No, they'll be taken down.
All right then.
Yeah.
And do you have any idea how close the building at 402 on the rear corner of the lot is? It sort of wraps around the corner there.
It does. I think they have a right around a 5-foot setback off that property line as well.
Very good.
Now,
thank you.
Just for everybody's note, the same client owns next door as well.
Be that as it may.
Yeah.
A couple of clarifications. If you can go to the plan, Mr. Russell. It doesn't appear that there's any interior connection from the garage to the units. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So all traffic comes from the driveway out onto the public walkway and around to the entries, right?
People will walk that direction, yes.
All right. And then at the first floor, this isn't specifically germane to our charge, but what are the long hallways on the first floor adjacent to the bedrooms? What is the purpose there?
They lead down to the bathroom and to the mechanical space and the laundry.
Just looks a little inefficient to me, but be that as it may. For the life of me, I could not figure out how you got from the second floor to the roof deck through that opening, the device that you showed. Where is that? Where does that occur on the second floor plan?
It'll occur over the stair. So the stair is a double stair. It stacks over the top of each other. And as you rise up that stair, they're latched, so they'll open as you come up the stair.
Can you go to the roof plan, please, Mr. Russell? See, see, it looks like the stairs at the roof deck are perpendicular to the stairs at the first and second floor.
There's two sets of stairs. There's a stair that wraps up through the skylight hatch. And then because we've gone with a slightly taller plate over the living area, I need to provide a stair to the roof deck. So that's what the second stair is for.
So you really need that big of a stair to get up onto the roof deck? I thought it was only 2 feet higher.
Yeah, which is 4 or 5 rises. Yep. By the time we're done.
All right, so the skylight hatches flip open, one
Yes.
steps out, and then onto the second stair to get to the roof deck. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. And if you could go to the elevations, you please, Mr. Russell. It appears that through, not so much on that one, yes, on the lower right, it appears through the use of some shadow that there's some difference in the plane, the surface between the wood and the plaster. That doesn't occur on the plan. What is going on there?
There will be a difference in the material finish just to create that shadow line.
Right.
It's hard to draw it at 1/8 inch with a pencil.
Yeah. All right, so let's see. I believe that's all my questions. Thank you, Chair Moore.
Okay. Mr. Black, go ahead.
Quick question. So could you discuss a little further about architectural style wise, how you were inspired by that neighborhood, in particular, that little cul-de-sac where everything looks sort of bungalow-esque to me? And then, which is a bit of a departure from the style that you are proposing here today.
It is. So the challenge, so when we initially started, the idea was to maybe create that bungalow style from the street. We studied a couple of different options. Now the real driver was the parking that wasn't going to work broken up, having the 2 curb cuts, having a lower lift, and the idea was to keep it to 2-story. So just to get the room. So having the forms enter off the street was in conflict with the way that the parking was working. So once we started to look, and then I started to look at the homes across the street, they are bungalows. The interesting part is that, yes, they're 1-story. They have tall plates and very steep roof pitches. And so I basically started to look at, okay, so I've got that volume to deal with. If I keep my plate heights lower, I can keep generally the whole building actually smaller than going 2-story with a pitched roof. So that was the general driver. And then once we started down this road into these really simple forms, which the bungalows are all around us, just very simple boxes with a pitched roof, was just to really pick up a couple of the materials, the plaster being one and the wood siding being the other. Granted, we went vertical with it, not horizontal, but that was generally the lead into the material palette that we chose.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Okay, anyone else?
Could we go back to the street views, photos? That was I had the same question that Board Member Black had, so I just wanted to look at these again a little closer.
Can we enlarge those pictures, please? Here we go.
Yeah, I don't know that I have any questions. I just wanted to look at them. So we can look at these and then the ones along the bottom a little bit. And that will satisfy me for now. Okay.
Okay, anyone else? Questions?
Oh, one last
Yes.
question. On your materials, Mr. McLeod, you list a wire mesh. Where is that used?
It was in front. So we're looking at the possibility of doing that as the garage door screens.
I see. Thank you.
So, yeah.
Okay.
That's all.
If that's everybody's questions, we can move on to comments if we're ready. Who would like to start?
Well,
I'll start, Chair Moore.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr.
Well,
Duke.
Certainly isn't a hard no or anything. I struggled to find the compatibility. I think it is an attractive building. Maybe if there was some other contextual structures outside of that little street, I don't know. I guess I'd be interested to see what the other board members say, but that's my initial comment right now, is just questioning the compatibility.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Mr. Whalen, you.
Sure. I agree. I think it's a sweet little design. However, it doesn't speak much about Santa Barbara at large or the neighborhood in the immediacy. I think one of the big misfires is a double car garage where none of the other houses on that half block have a garage at all. So just the imposition of this big double car door is going to be a tough to wrestle with, no matter what the architectural expression is. But it is pretty comprehensive on that block. Everything, it's sort of, you could call it bungalow. They're really all, they look like turn of the century, modest little worker houses. I would dare say they're even cute along that way. This design doesn't seem to be in character at the least with any of that. In fact, it rather crowds the site, but then all of the buildings on that block make good use of their land. I could not support this design as proposed in view of the neighborhood conflict. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Olson, go ahead.
Back to what Mr. Nunn said, it would have been helpful to have pictures of some of the buildings close to this, but not on the street, because what I'm hoping for is to find some support for the building as is, because I think it's quite handsome. The choice of materials, I think, is very appropriate for the neighborhood. I like the concept here of why the applicant has not put a sloped roof on it. I think that makes very much sense to me. So I do support this design and would like to see it similar in its next evolution.
Okay. Anyone else? Vice Chair Six, go ahead.
Yes, I can't support this project at all. As previous members have said, there's no neighborhood compatibility whatsoever. There is, I think, some real problems. We as our fellow board, the single design guidelines folks, have a lot of concern, and so do we, with privacy to neighbors. And here we have floor to ceiling huge windows looking down onto the neighbor of the east. Granted, that eastern neighbor might be own the land, but that can change. And to have these windows looking down on my property, and as well as a roof deck that's right up at 6 feet and looking down on my property again, it just really stands against our concern for neighborhood privacy and compatibility. I think that the roof deck, it's not it. I think it's and I think one should study that if it's needed at all. You get up there and you're face to face, one house away from the freeway at eye level to the freeway. I just don't see the benefit of having that amenity. I think one board member talked about site circulation from people having the garage from parking in the garage, having to walk out to the street and then back into their unit is very problematic. I think that, I think the challenge here is, I think the pitched roofs of the neighborhood is, I think there could be a design with a tweak to modernism, but I think that the shape of the pitched roofs in the neighborhood is something that should be studied. And the challenge would be to pitch those roofs in a way to clip the volumes of the second story areas as much as possible and still get usable space at the sides. Really hover that pitch roof down as far as possible and minimize the impact of the straight up boxes to the neighborhood and to the neighbors on both sides, and have it be more compatible with the neighborhood. I think that when it comes back, if it is in any close form to this, I think we need to see further documentation on how intimately the neighbors to east and west would be affected with their privacy. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. All right, well, I guess I myself, I certainly appreciate the design and the intent. So I would encourage the applicant to find ways of perhaps it's in the materiality where you can express it in a modern way, but simulate some of the more traditional aspects of the surrounding neighborhood in your proposal. And I would also encourage you to reach out a little broader in your photographic presentation of the surrounding sites and look for examples of alternate styles within that, say 4 or 5 block radius that might help support your case for compatibility. So that's my input.
I'd like to add something.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'd like to go back to what Mr. Six said about the windows. I think that's a very, very valid point. And I didn't mention it in my approval, but I do think that the windows create a problem for the neighbors. So I would like to, in the next iteration, see those reduced in size.
Okay. Thank you. So would somebody like to craft a motion? Vice Chair Six, did you want to take a swing at it?
Oh, I think I would rather have somebody else, because I am rather strong about my lack of acceptance of this. So I would rather.
Understood. 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 Mr. Noon, do you want to take a swing in? You're muted, by the way.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, I do, and I like the way Board Member Olson articulated his point. You know, I want to support it. I just want to find an argument to do so. But keeping in line with what some of the other board members said, I think I want to understand. It sounds like there's a definite need for further looking at the windows and how they affect the property, adjacent properties. But you know, if I were to make a motion, it would be to not necessarily change the design, but to come back with maybe a broader area to find the compatibility. I guess I would want to maybe see if I can get support for that before I craft it up.
Okay. Well, we could do a straw vote just to ask how many board members could support a motion for the applicant to return with additional photo documentation of the surrounding neighborhood showing more sympathetic or similar style to the proposed design. Is that what you had in mind, Mr.
Yes.
Newman?
Yeah, that's well said.
Okay, well, why don't we take a straw vote on that?
I can go ahead and take roll call. So Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
No.
Board Member Black,
No.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
No.
Okay, so it looks like it's 3-3.
So that does not pass then.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess I would encourage somebody else to take a swing at a motion then.
How would I phrase this?
Well, Mr. Chair, I will do my best here. I would make a motion for indefinite continuance for the applicant to study ways to have this design more compatible with the neighborhood, to find ways to reduce the apparent scale of the project by either clipped roofs or further setbacks on the upper floor. Number 3, to show documentation of how one deals with the privacy issues for the existing neighbors to the east and west. In particular, on that same comment item, to in particular privacy issues created by the large picture windows on the east elevation into the from the primary living areas. Number 4, to at least study and find and provide reasons why provide, let's see here, to study alternate site circulation paths that avoid the residents from walking back out on the street from their parking garage to their entry. And let's back up to the compatibility issue to say that to study ways to find to make the project more compatible with the neighborhood in regards to materials and form, granted that a contemporary take on those materials and forms would be acceptable. That would be my motion.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Seconded in by Mr. Black. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Olson.
Yes, I would like to speak to what is going to be a negative on this motion, is that I think this is a thoughtful, creative solution that will provide 2 very livable homes on a difficult site. I mean, we're 100 yards from the freeway, and this applicant has considered that thoughtfully, and I just can't see how asking the applicant to make this house look more like the neighbors is doing the eventual residents of this any favor. So I'm going to vote no against the motion, but and I really do support this kind of design, which steps a little bit outside of perhaps what's in the neighborhood, the immediate neighborhood. But I think that I think it would look all right in this neighborhood. That's all my comments on this.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
If I may, I'd like to add to my motion a last item to in regards to privacy issues. I guess it would be a subcategory of the privacy issues, not only especially the picture plate windows, but the location of the roof deck in its adjacency to the neighbor to the east. So,
okay.
I don't know if you got that, but that would be the proper place for that additional comment.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's read that motion back. Okay.
All right, so the motion was to continue the project indefinitely with the following comments. Number 1, study ways to have the design be more compatible with the neighborhood. Study ways to make the project compatible in regards to materials and forms, granted that a contemporary take on those materials and forms would be acceptable. Number 2, find ways to reduce the apparent scale of the project by either clipped roofs or further setbacks on the upper floor. Number 3, show documentation of how the applicant will deal with privacy issues with existing neighbors to the east and west. particularly study privacy issues created by the large picture windows in the roof deck on the east elevation. And number 4, study alternate site circulation paths that would avoid having the residents walking on the street from the parking garage to their home entry. And is made by 6 and seconded by Black.
Okay. Does that sound correct, Vice Chair Six?
That sounds better than I stated it.
Okay. Just to dig a little deeper, sorry, Vice Chair Six, but to dig a little deeper into the motion. Remind me, does it talks about roof slope? Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
it's not. I think, Mary, if it's not study pitched roofs and or setbacks, is that what the wording was on that?
Yes, by either the pitched
Either.
roofs or further setbacks.
I think that would give them the possibility of not introducing setbacks, not introducing pitched roofs. Is that your concern, Chair Moore?
I guess so, yeah. I want to leave open the possibility that they can demonstrate through photos or some other context that, you know, a flat roof or a parapet roof design is compatible.
I would welcome
So I didn't want the motion to say,
Chair Moore, I would
go ahead.
I would welcome an additional comment on the motion to maybe a subcategory of the first one, the compatibility, would be another sentence to say provide more examples in a broader area that might support the proposed design.
I think that gives them, there's a little more flexibility in that,
Okay,
if that's acceptable to everybody.
Yes.
I think that's a good suggestion, Chair Moore.
Okay. All right, well, if we're happy with that motion, if the maker and the seconder are ready, we can take our vote.
All right, so I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
yes,
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
No,
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you very much. And moving on to item number 2. How are we doing on time? Number 2 is 3:50. We're just a little bit behind. Okay. All right. If we can see item 2, there we go. Item 2 is 516 North Quarantina Street. This is a pre-application review. This is a one-time pre-application consultation. The site is currently developed with a warehouse building fronting Quarantina Street and a single-story commercial building access from Bond Avenue. Proposal to construct a new second story above an as-built kitchen addition located at the rear of the commercial building, including a new bridge, walkway, and den in order to accommodate a new live-work unit. Project includes addressing violations outlined in an enforcement case by permitting a lounge addition, which is proposed to be converted to a garage, kitchen and bathing facilities, a storage space, gate and fencing facing Bond Avenue, and unpermitted electrical, plumbing, and mechanical improvements. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. This project requires compliance with the project compatibility findings and the urban design guidelines. All right, it looks like we have Ms. Plummer with us to say, give us an intro.
Thank you, Chair Moore. So yes, as it says in the project description and the footer, the project is before you today for a one-time pre-application consultation, just to receive initial feedback on the design and general consistency with the project compatibility findings. And the project will return at a later date for a formal concept review. So we're just, again, looking at additional initial feedback on the design of the building. The use, the live work use may change in the future. That's what was submitted to the city, but we do want feedback on the design before we move forward with it. And the applicant, Mr. Lungsbetter, is here to present on behalf of his project. I'll be here if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Langsfelder, please walk us through your project. Trees, try and keep your presentation to 15 minutes at the maximum so we have time to ask questions, etc.
Of course. Thank you, board members, in advance for your time. Just a very brief history of this building. I was building a large-scale robotics device in the mid-'80s and searched all over the city to find an appropriate building that could house the construction of this machine. And turns out there was only a handful of buildings that would accommodate the kind of clear span that I needed, and this was one of them. So I've owned this building since '87. And what I'm proposing there, when I purchased the building, you can see there's actually two buildings. It's a little hard from that initial drawing that you see in the corner, the 3D illustration. But basically there's a front building and a rear building. The rear building is smaller and single story. It's like a story and a half. And attached to it were two wooden structures when I purchased the building. These were unpermitted, and the city has recently made me aware of the fact that I need to do something about that, and I concur. And if we can go to sheet 5, I want to just illustrate what's there. So on these elevations, the existing elevation, you can kind of see the smaller building, and you can see that there, if you look at the north or the rear elevation, you can see where the building kind of transitions from a peak roof to kind of a shed roof design on both sides of the smaller building. And those were the wooden structures that were added to the building prior to my ownership. And have been in use for, over 30 years. However, they're unpermitted, and what I would like to do is demolish those and replace them with two-story structures. I am in love with these Butler buildings just because they're a peculiar vernacular to Santa Barbara. There aren't many. I don't know of even another one in the city. And so my attempt here was to design a building to keep this additional space, but also to keep the original commercial space. It's very unique. It's a lovely workspace. So rather than cut into that portion of the building, I would build on either side and then connect with a bridge. And if we go back to the first sheet, Will, you can see the two, what I might call towers, one from the rear of the building and another from in the front of the building, and then they're connected with a bridge. And this preserves the inside space, the original Butler building space, which there is a photo of, which we can look at in a little while. But it's just a nice, clear, open space. And this would allow some additional office space or living space, depending on which way I go with this project. I had originally conceived of it as live work, as Pilar said, but there's a lot of implications going in that direction that may be too problematic. And because I'm looking to the board to give me some aesthetic direction here, you could imagine it either way. It could be live work, it could be just work. But in either case, those additional spaces would be helpful if somebody were using this for, you know, some light manufacture or assemblage of a product or something that where they could have some office space as well as the kind of commercial space. And actually, if you don't mind, Will, going to the, I believe it's the last sheet that has the pictures and the neighborhood. Yeah. So you can see F. I don't know if those can be blown up, but F is the internal space that I'm trying to preserve. It's just a nice open workspace. With two large doors, you get a lot of air and it's lovely. You actually have a view of the mountains. Bond Street, if people aren't familiar, is the property address is on Quarantina. However, this property is on Bond. This property represents the corner of Bond and Quarantina, and Bond is 1 block in from Coda, right across from the junior high school. So you actually get a little bit of the junior high school view and the mountain view. And it's a mixed use neighborhood. There's still some residential units, some houses that are on commercial lots but haven't been formally rebuilt as commercial. There's one house that was rebuilt as a house across the street. Lovely couple lived there. The gal, it was her father who owned the house for many years and was not in good condition, so she tore it down and rebuilt it exactly as it had been. There's also Santa Barbara Seafood right across the street, their distribution point. So it's a commercial neighborhood for sure, but there is some residential amongst the commercial buildings. I guess if you can go to sheet 5 again, Will. Yeah, so there's the existing, again, the existing elevations. And now if you can go to the new elevations, I believe that's, yeah, there we go. So there's basically what I'm proposing, where you can see where the second story portions are connected with the bridge. And the bridge allows us to connect those two sections without disturbing the integrity of the original Butler building, aesthetically or structurally. And at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, thank you. We need to open public comment first before we get to questions.
Sure.
So if any member of the public would like to address the board regarding this project, you can follow the instructions on screen. That will alert planning staff that you would like to make a comment. Do we have anybody out there?
All right, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So if any member of the public would like to speak on item 2, please raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak and I can call on you. All right, so I don't see any hands raised and we did not receive written correspondence, so I'll turn it over back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. So questions from the board. Who has questions?
Could we see the plans?
Mr. Whalen, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Moore. Mr. Lengsfelder, currently the Bond Street elevation has a series of fences and gates. Are those to be retained or returned?
To be changed. There is a gate visible here on the west elevation, and that would be more in keeping with the actual building. And then there would probably be some sort of a security gate that would close that where the curb cut is.
So if I'm correct in my interpretation of your presentation, the one-story Butler building will remain, and the additions, the taller portions, are new construction. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. And then in the tower, I call it the tower, the one above the garage on Bond Street, the only access to that is from across the bridge and down a spiral stair. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And then the report says a second story, but to my eye, the drawings say that's a third story. Is it just 2 stories?
Correct. It's 2 stories.
Okay, and so the ground floor is just really tall.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the clear span. It's about I forgot what the plate height is here. I think it's about 14 feet, something like that. Maybe
Okay.
16 at the peak.
Thank you, Chair Moore.
Okay, who's next? Mr. Six.
Yes, thank you. So to follow up on Mr. Whalen's question, the three stacked windows on the left-hand side of the north elevation, that mid window is just a very high window in the lower floor?
Correct.
Okay. And then what we see here between the new, still focusing on the north elevation, the width of the existing Butler building that you want to save is the width that's between the new, it's the length of the bridge, correct?
Exactly right.
Okay,
Yep.
I get it. And then I couldn't either Google it or not, but are you anticipating with this front tower, the street side tower, radical removal of the tree? I don't think it might be a street tree. Can we have,
I think it's a neighbor's tree, and I think we would just have to trim it a little bit where it comes over the property line.
well, photos are deceiving because it looked in the photos like it was fairly extensive. Can we go back to the photo page? Well, here you can see the aerial. It looks like half the tree is
Yeah, I'm trying to think if here, I don't have, let me see, I think, yes, down at the bottom is exactly across the street. If H, I don't know if we can make that a little larger. So there's the tree. And you can see where the metal building comes up against the wood fence there. The neighbor has put the wood fence directly, exactly where your pointer is. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a significant but yet not central branch that would need to be cut.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I guess this comes into comments. Did you ever, in focusing on the north elevation again, did you consider cantilevering the right-hand tower, the kitchen bedroom, cantilevering it over the existing roof and getting a wider bedroom den combination and not having to build this remote den?
I have to say honestly that I did not.
Mm-hmm.
But I would certainly look into that if the board feels that that would be a big improvement.
It might be a radical overhang, but what the spanning bridge and so forth is pretty radical in its structural implications too. So it doesn't seem like, I mean, it could be, well, I'll end my comment, my question there.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Olson.
Could we look at the floor plans again, please? Mr. Russell.
So we're looking here only at tenant space A, because B is the other building, is the larger building, B and C. So we can focus on A.
And is there a third story or second story floor plan?
Yeah, right there.
Well, as maybe I only have comments here. Mr. Six has sort of used the word radical, and I'd have to agree, it's radical. And for that reason, I want to find some way to encourage it. But so I guess maybe the question might be, is there a way to connect these two towers that might make that bridge somehow turn that into livable space?
You know, I have to say the bridge is one of the features that brought me to this. I remember picking up my father. My mother and I would go to pick up my father at the train station in New York, and the bridge over the tracks was something that I spent a lot of time looking at. And when I was trying to conceive of how I could replace these elements that the city wanted torn down, which I understand, there's no debate, they're wooden and they're not up to code. The thought of having a bridge between the two sections was very exciting to me. And since then, since I've started this process, which was over a year ago, I've noticed on Garden Street, there's a bridge between two spaces. It's terrific. I don't know. I've started noticing there's 2 or 3 in Santa Barbara now that I've noticed. And I just feel like, well, it's a metal building and somehow a bridge seems to, now the bridge itself, the design of it, I'm open to some ideas if people don't like the way it looks. And I understand that it's radical, but I kind of like it. Originally, to be honest, I had the bridge covered. And then I started thinking more about it and I thought, we're in Santa Barbara. We don't really need a covered bridge except for what, a half a dozen days of the year. And I came to think, you know, it would be a really nice place to be able to just step out into the open air. So I don't know if that changes any positions, but, or any minds.
Okay. Anybody else with questions? Ms. Anderson, go ahead.
Oh yeah, can we go to the elevations again?
Yeah.
And looking at the Bond Street, there it is. The first tower, did you study the plate height for that den room? Have you studied lowering that, or did you study alternative roofing options?
Have not, and I'm open to. The plate height was basically, you know, we're slightly high because of the first story to try to keep, to make the bridge so that you don't, the original design to accommodate that, you'd have to step up to the bridge and then step back down. It didn't make sense. It made more sense to just elevate both structures than to have stairs to the bridge. So it was really that was the determining factor. As to the roof design on the top, it could go to a shed roof. I thought this looked better, but that would be a way of maybe bringing it down a bit. I'm not sure if that's answering your question.
I guess the question is, I can't really read it here, but what is the plate height on that, just for the den room on that second story? Oh, it's 9 feet. Okay, thanks. Those are my questions.
Okay. I've got a couple of clarifications / questions for you. If we go to the site plan. So the proposed additions are essentially right on the, I guess, more northern property line and the more southerly property line. So you're
exactly
kind of,
right.
So on the south side, you're kind of butting up against, from that aerial photo, you're butting up against another 1.5 story tall commercial building, it looks like.
Correct. Cinder block wall.
On the more northerly side, your adjacent neighbor is a 1 story, appears to be residential.
It is.
Use with another detached structure in the back with a little yard space, right? If we could go to that aerial photo quickly.
I have never been in their backyard, so I would have to.
So it looks like there's sort of 2 structures there with a little.
No, I'm not sure. I think that may be.
We could.
That
Mr. Russell,
other
we could
structure
zoom
that
in
you're
on that.
seeing, it's a flag lot, and so that other structure is part of Santa Barbara Seafood. You see the trucks parked there.
I'm talking about the structure just to the right of where the cursor is, the little hand. I guess I can do this, watch. I can annotate. So this structure.
Ah, yes. So those are 2 rather poorly maintained. Santa Barbara's infamous landlord has recently bought it in the last few years, and it's unfortunately deteriorated quite a bit. But they were 2 small houses. They still are.
Okay. So you're along this property line, your new construction is right on that property line. You're a few inches off of it.
Correct.
And the same here.
Correct. Now that's a warehouse, and that is a block wall without any windows or anything in it.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, can we go back to the site plan? Please. So the garage addition, it comes right up to the sidewalk?
It does.
Okay. And maybe this is a question for Ms. Plummer. Is that going to be acceptable to back out like that?
Thank you, Chair Moore. So at this stage, the project has been preliminarily reviewed by transportation, and we did have some comments on it. I don't know at this point whether or not that specific parking orientation will work. Again, this is just very early days, one-time pre-application consultation to get feedback on the design, but there may be changes as it relates to that specific space as well as the other.
Okay, thank you. And then next question is, so in this the existing little metal building that you're kind of building around and over, what you talk about the quality of the space. Is it the kind of the interior feel? Is it the kind of the whole package, or is it the roof line? Like what is it that you find so
The interior.
endearing? Okay.
And it's been home to many different both artists, architects, designers, planners over the years.
Mhm.
And they actually, a lot of them have used it as a live work. People that have gone on, I can say, some of them have gone on to bigger and better. But it's a very useful and very friendly workspace.
Sure, I have no doubt. I guess, so my question, I guess the point of that question was, and then some of the other board members have kind of sniffed around at that, is it possible to maintain that space without essentially building on top of it and maintain the quality of the space, in your opinion?
You mean keep it all single story, for instance?
No, I'm saying if your proposed development was above that the single story metal building space instead of to either side of it.
Probably could be done. Part of what I didn't want to get into, because I was afraid that once I started, I don't want to rely on the Butler building structure. You know, they're designed in such a way that I was afraid that once I started tearing the roof off and doing that kind of work, I was looking at it from a practical building standpoint. I'm not a developer, and I know this process can get very involved. And so I was trying to keep it what I thought was simple.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like if I start with new construction at the front and the rear, so all that's the code, and it's built for 2-story, and just connect them.
Sure.
So it was with that simplicity rather than trying to somehow, you know, and I don't know that I need more space to, you know, in terms of filling in over the roof. That didn't seem to be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it could be done.
Mm-hmm. Okay, those are my questions. Anybody else with follow-up? No? Okay, let's go to comments, please. Who'd like to start? Well, I'll jump in. I mean, I guess it is a very unique proposal in a lot of ways. And there's something about it that's kind of charming in some ways, and then there's other aspects that are really challenging in other ways. And I think the big issue is that the desire to keep the little piece of steel building driving this kind of very large change and large impact to the adjacent neighbor. And I wonder if in the end, it wouldn't be more cost efficient to start over essentially with that little building and attempt to recreate it in some way with a second story on top, instead of going through all these machinations trying to preserve it. So that's kind of where my starting point is. And then just the impact of putting the new garage with its second, very tall new garage with a second story right in that corner on the sidewalk and adjacent to that house is a hard one for me. So I'm interested to hear the other board members' perspective on this. Vice Chair Six. Oh, you're muted.
I totally concur with you, Mr. Chair, in regards to probably the best solution would be to redo the Butler building in the back and have something that's a lot more efficient and sensitive to the site and the neighbor. But, you know, and so that would be my first recommendation. My second recommendation is, you know, either to cantilever the den over the back structure, over this the back slope of the existing building, and perhaps even bring out a couple posts and bring them down with a balcony right at the face of the existing the street face of the existing Butler building, and then having a very industrial looking deck, and then back, you know, supported by those same posts down, the bump out for the den hovering above the, again, the back slope of the existing Butler. I think there's different ways to arrange it here. I think this, Mr. Lansfielder must be a very energetic man to go up and down these tall spiral staircases into his bedroom from the kitchen and then out to his den outdoors. I think that there would be a much more usable and efficient arrangement of the parts here, and still have something that's fairly exciting. If, you know, seeing this beast clear span over and post down on the front side, that could be an exciting statement. And it could be, these posts down could be set back from the neighbor to the neighbor to the north, to where this cantilever is not right smack adjacent to the neighbor to the north.
Okay. So, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Whalen?
Sure. Well, what a fun project, Mr. Langsfelder. I think it has a very real charm to it. And you're in an exceptional Santa Barbara neighborhood where almost anything goes. Mm-hmm. It does seem like it's a little tortured, though, and needs some refinement. I'm wondering almost if you couldn't dispense with that bridge and make 2 3-story units, each having their own identity and purpose. And to tear off member 6's comments, my first thought was trying to get furniture up a spiral staircase. What a headache. But I too have appreciation for Butler buildings. However, the additions that you're doing really aren't Butler buildings at all. They are nowhere near anything you would get out of a catalog. So I would encourage you to think about them being separate creatures. They could even be plaster. They could have different kinds of roofs. They could not try so hard to be Butler buildings that they aren't. I like the idea of this tower element. I agree with the others that it rather looms over the adjacent neighborhood and on the sidewalk. I would like to see a refinement of the roofs on those two new portions to be have a little more distinct identity rather than just a shed roof and a gable roof. That just doesn't seem to work at all. Seems like the fenestration on the non-tower portion is rather rote. I think you see where I'm going with this. I think that's enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Olson?
There's lots of words being used here to describe it as odd and tortured, and I throw in another one is maybe impractical. And I don't think that's in our purview here to make those kinds of judgments, but it is affecting me and how I see this. And of those suggestions that have come forward to this point, I think Chair Moore fits with mine, and that is that I think that with the creative juices that this applicant has, that the removal of the small Butler building and sort of starting from scratch here on this side of it could provide something very interesting and more practical and probably not any more expensive. Mm-hmm. So I'm not in favor of the proposal as it's shown, but I want to be somehow because it has such great character to it. And so I'm siding here with Chair Moore on how to go forward.
Okay, anyone else? Add some comments? Go ahead.
Chair Moore, thank you. I'll add just a couple comments. I could support the project. I think I found the enthusiasm of the applicant to use the bridge, and it seems that the neighborhood would welcome the uniqueness. I think there are some issues that have been brought up. I mean, the front tower facing Bond, maybe that's going to be a parking issue, so I won't, just kind of wait to see how that develops. But and perhaps maybe for the applicant moving forward could think about the neighborhood to the north. But other than that, I think I could support the project.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Anything to add? Okay, so this is a question for staff. This is a pre-app process. Is a list of comments acceptable, or is a motion required?
Thank you, Chair Moore. As this is a one-time pre-application consultation, no motion is required. We would appreciate a summary of your comments, as you've outlined them, but it won't be continued to a later date. It's just a one-time hearing. Thank you.
Okay.
Chairman, if I may just interject one thing.
Just very briefly. Very briefly.
To be honest, the removal of the building is not an option of the existing building.
Okay.
That's beyond my capabilities financially. I studied it to see if it wouldn't be, but it's not practical. I can't make that work. So okay. I just want to, I understand the desire and I do appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. What I'm going to do is ask each board member just to make a brief list of their comments, and that way staff can write these down. And let's start with Vice Chair 6, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, my comments would be to rearrange the basic massings proposed to find a way to navigate over the existing Butler building as proposed by a superstructure that would pull back the massing from the street, connect the den and the living spaces on the 3rd floor, and also have concerns about the parking arrangement and its relationship and harshness to the street.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Black, do you have any comments you want to add?
No, I think, you know, I'm sort of in favor of the comments that Mr. Noon has already made. You know, I could pretty much accept it the way it's being proposed here now. As quirky as it is, I think it could work. Those are my comments.
Mr. Noon, why don't you just give us a brief list of your comments?
I would just, to begin with, would be in support of the direction of the project. I would encourage the applicant to study and present the northern privacy issue to the north, neighbor to the north. If you could just develop that a little further. And we'll see how the parking resolves with staff.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Anderson?
I don't really have anything to add. I mean, I would support the project, and I feel like it fits in with the neighborhood.
Okay, so in line with Mr. Noon?
Yeah, correct. And Mr. Six, just studying the relationship to the neighbor of the north and making the massing more appropriate to that neighbor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Olson?
So I'm trying to find some way to avoid the what my need to remove that building. So perhaps if these two structures were joined together more substantially than from a than with an open balcony or deck or connection, perhaps with they would appear to be more or less one building connected, so it wasn't two buildings that way. That's the only suggestion I can offer that might meet with some of my objections here aesthetically.
Okay, Mr. Whalen?
Yes, to reiterate, I would refine the massing to more of a village-like character, giving the additions a different material finish and refining their roofs in a more interesting and engaging way.
Okay, thank you. My own comments, I think, align with Vice Chair Six's, so I don't need to repeat those. So, okay. Is that satisfactory to staff?
Thank you, Chair Moore. Yes, that works for now.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, and good luck moving forwards. If we could take a 2-minute stretch break and adjourn in 2 minutes. So can we reopen our meeting?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we're gonna reopen our meeting and move on to item number 3, which is 402 South Hope Avenue. It's a new item for concept review. And it's a proposal for a 1,700 square foot service maintenance building, a 2,354 square foot expansion in addition to the Mercedes-Benz Porsche building, a 467 square foot expansion to the BMW/Audi building, construction of a 1,532 square foot service portico for the Porsche building, and the demolition and reconstruction of a new 347 square foot trash enclosure. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. Project requires compliance with the project compatibility findings, Upper State Street area design guidelines, and the urban design guidelines. Okay, do we have our applicant with us?
Yes, you do. This is Mike Ramsey with Lasardi Construction. Just a couple things though. It does say on there that the owner is Marie Hauser and SBAG, but it's been this way for forever. It's on the plans. It's SB Automotive LLLP, which is the Santa Barbara Auto Group, same people who own that whole frontage area. But
okay, well that's I don't see that in the item description here, so I think we're okay. So we request that you complete your presentation within 15 minutes so we have time to ask questions and all that.
Okay.
All that stuff. So if you can walk us through what you've got, you can introduce yourself and take it away.
All right. Those plans, now there are. Okay, so this project has been in front of you before. It's been reviewed. It hasn't changed except for the fact that we had to go in and ask for the square footage formally through city council and then go through the whole, everything all over again. We thought that we were able to use the footage because we hadn't done some improvements that we had to have approved in the past, and so had to go back through. Let me go to the next page here. Sorry, I'm not sure how to change the page on this, but
Mr. Ramsey, we have control on our end, so feel free to just direct.
Yeah, just let's go to the site plan then, please. Yeah, and if you could zoom in on the colored areas there. Perfect. As you can see, the portico, the areas that are in the yellow are right now they're covered display areas. Those are going to be turned into portions of the showroom. The purple area is an added part of the sales, or not sales, but the service riders areas. And then the blue is the portico that they talked about, that so the people pull up their cars to be serviced and they drive through into the back and into the Porsche area where that says Porsche service, or into the new electric vehicle maintenance building. And then over at BMW, there is a roofed portico area for display. They had previously, in a couple approvals back, had this as an addition, and they decided not to do it at the time. And so now we're coming back, and it's going to be a display area and a new vehicle area where they take the people who purchase the vehicles and go over all the details of the vehicle delivery area. And if you would like to go to the floor plan next. Next page. Oh, and then right there is that's the new trash enclosure. We're moving it from that center area over to, it's on the eastern portion of the property. We go back to it was on the plan, the previous approved plan. It's going to go in this location right over here, up just past where the drive is. We can go to the floor plan. Next one. So you see the areas working in there. There's the reception off in the front, the service riders, and the areas of where we're going to be enclosing in the showroom, the drive-through area at the portico. And then down in the lower corner is just the details of enclosing that front area on the BMW. If we go to the next page. Next page, sorry. This is the battery building that's in that inner area courtyard between the two dealerships. And in the previous, it was at the height was an issue. We said that we wanted to bring it down a couple feet. It went from 22 feet to 20'4" to the top of the parapet. And in the previous building, the comments were to make the exterior look, have the same detail as the rest of the buildings, which was adding that bands and kind of making a pronounced columns. And then before we had like a pyramid shaped deal on the corners, and that went away, and it's just straight and flat like the rest of the building. If you go to the, switch the page again, sorry. You can go even another one, please. There's the elevations of the portico on the front of the building for Porsche. And keeping the roof lines all the same, just extending it out across, just a big flat area portico where they pull in. And then if you go to the next page, is the elevations of the front area in front of BMW, just enclosing that glass area in there. And then the final would be an elevation of showing the looking from the street back, an elevation of the portion of the service building that's in the back building. If you go to the next page, please. You can see in the distance the service building, the electric vehicle service building in the back. Just a better view of it. And that is it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Russell, this might be a bit of an ask, but is it possible to get our minutes or our motions from all of these sort of separately presented projects in the past?
Not have them present for this meeting. I can try and I can update you, but I would proceed with the review without that knowledge, because I believe the case planner is also present today, and maybe they can speak to some of the history on the project, but I do believe that it's just considered new. So okay. I will look, but no guarantees.
Okay. All right. From memory, we didn't have a lot of issues necessarily with all of these pieces and parts, but yeah, it would be good to kind of refresh everybody's minds with that. So, okay, regardless, if that concludes your presentation, we need to open public comment and ask if there's any member of the public that would like to address the board regarding this project. You can follow the instructions on screen. Do we have anybody out there?
Thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So if any member of the public would like to speak on this item, they can go ahead and raise their hand to indicate that they would like to speak, and I will call on you. All right, so I don't see any hands raised at this time, and we did not receive any written correspondence, so I'll turn it over back to you, Chair Moore.
Thank you. We will close public comment and go to questions from the board. Who has questions? Vice Chair Six, go ahead.
I guess the question begging is, Mr. Ramsey, has there been any design changes since we last reviewed this in the several previous reviews?
The only ones were just the ones that you had asked, which was on the Porsche showroom itself. It was just running this beam across the front there that, ties everything together, making it so that it all came together. And then lowering the height of the building back in that back courtyard, the electric vehicle charging building, and making the details on the building match what's going on in the rest of the buildings that are adjacent to it.
Okay, I understand the latter. Could you direct Mr. Russell to go to a sheet or page or drawing that focuses in the other change? The first change, the continuous beam or whatever it was?
If you go to the floor plan, go back, keep going, stop right there. If you look between grid line 11 and 12, there it.
Can we zoom up? Can we zoom there, Mr. Russell?
Yeah. You'll see a column right between the reception and that gray area where it says new addition. Before that column was not in line with the front column, and it also wasn't in line with the other and left kind of a jog in that area. And we just brought it all out. So now that it runs in the same line and makes it just a real straight, transfer and across the front of the building. So it kind of matches with everything else.
I think I remember. Can you zoom out a little bit to capture the rest of the northerly part of this a little bit more? So we enter, it's very confusing where one enters, but anyway, there's the grand entry and the up above, how can I explain this? Above column line 14 is the grand entry where there's a standalone porte cochere. Now there's a covered or enclosed car to the display to the left of that.
Yeah, it's all those areas, the two light gray areas that are adjacent, I guess it would be between grid lines R and Q, and 13 and 14, those are existing big display areas, and we're just putting glass to enclose those two in, and they become part of the showroom.
I think I'm going north of you.
North of me, that's all Mercedes. And if you go to the site plan, you can see it better how it relates to the entry for this project.
Okay, let's stay here.
Okay.
There's a main reception and a stairway up above line 14.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yeah, it's the main entry. You walk
That's
underneath
the main entry. So on the left-hand side of this main entry, is that been enclosed already?
On the left-hand side, no, that is new. That's new showroom right there.
Okay, so my question is the glass line on the right-hand side of this main entry is recessed in back of the columns, and on the left-hand side, it appears to be flush with the outside.
It's flush with the outside, and when they got that approved, they asked to have that added square footage and keep the front that's facing out to the street the same, and that's where they had it put. This we kept in line with the rest of the building rather than try to pick up that extra square footage, but to make it look like pretty much everywhere else in the building.
So that's going to be a very different look.
But that's a different dealership too. I mean, it's, if you go back to the front elevation, I mean, that is all Porsche on that side, and the other side is all Mercedes. So,
Okay.
and if you look at how now the front walk area comes out from the front of the building, because that's really Mercedes reception area, that it really divides that building if you look at the colored elevation again.
Okay, one more thing that I won't beat this to death. I think we went through it last time. Can we go to a site plan that shows the flow of the cars and so forth into the new service bay?
Go back.
Yeah, can you really zoom?
Yeah, you can zoom in. Yeah, you can zoom in on that area, I guess.
Really, yeah, tighter. Where the new service bay, yeah, right there. That's where I want to go. So, if we look at the open above roof on this new service bay, queue. The only reason for that open above roof is to get your column out there outside the traffic, correct?
Yes.
And there's no way you can see, there's right where that column is, there's the old dotted line where the curb used to be. You can't maintain that and get your column back to a reasonable span between the building and this side column, so you don't have to have that, what is that, a 30-foot, 40-foot?
Yeah, you'd have a longer span. If you brought it back to that, I don't, you can have a column out in near your drive, and
No, I'm saying bring it back.
Where the existing dotted line, where the existing curb was, bring it back even further?
No. Have the column send itself down at the corner of the covered portion of your new service queue.
In the middle of the roadway.
So
yeah, it's kind of out in the middle of the roadway. I don't see how that, I mean, that just makes it tight in there. I guess, I mean, you could and get rid of that whole overhang, but that's, I mean, previously that wasn't a problem, but if it's a problem now, addressing it.
It still bugs me, and it seems, and my new discovery is that, you did have some extra width in that turning curve that you're filling in. So anyway, that's really bugging me, but probably nobody else has seen that. But you could protect that column with some extraordinary material at the bottom of it.
It's something that we can look at. I mean, I'm not going to discount your opinion. So something that we can look at. And I know we're
okay. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions? Mr. Whalen.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to be clear. It said this project has come before. I recognize some of the parts of it, but the part that was just under discussion by member 6, we've not seen that before, right?
Yes, we have.
Yes, you have.
We have seen it before. Perhaps I missed that meeting. This is all new territory to me. Thank you.
Yeah, and the overriding rationale for that excessive span, well, in my opinion, excessive span was to clear. There was too much tightness in between those two lanes, the two service queues and the one turning to the right to go beyond down into the I guess that's more customer parking.
Yeah, it's their charging area, it's handicap parking, customer parking. You know, and looking at it, we could also, if you see the curved island right as you're turning, you'd be turning from the driveway into there, you could pull that back and open up the driveway, you know, forcing them to turn and drive in. So it's something that can be done. It's something to look at. I mean, we can put it to further discussion.
Well, I don't mean to belabor this, but when you look at the elevations, that span is excessive and jarring in the architecture.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
Chair
Russell,
Moore.
go ahead.
Thank you. So I just kind of wanted to get a date on when you and the board last reviewed this project. I do believe we might have some minutes from 2015, 2020. There's just a lot of history.
2020 might have been the, let me see here.
Okay.
2020 might have been the date on that.
Okay. Okay. With that information, I can go back and.
And maybe an 8, I think, I mean, it got 18, 2020. I mean, we came back a couple times, so.
Okay, no worries. And then also, Chair Moore, to applicant, Mr. Ramsey. It does look like, did you have anyone else that you wanted to be present for your presentation today? I did see some potential applicants, but unless it's just you, that's fine. I just want to make sure.
Myself and maybe the owner, Dwayne Sanders, but I don't know if he's.
Dwayne Sanders is raising his hand.
Okay.
If you would like him to be.
Oh, yes, he can speak if he's the owner.
Okay, maybe just in case there's other questions. Okay.
Uh-huh.
With that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to keep looking. So thank you.
Oh, it's all right. I'm dealing with headphone issues on my end. Apologize. Still in question, Mr. Olson.
So the question I have is, I think we're at some great disadvantage by not having minutes from previous meetings. And that also, because this goes back so far, whether some of our new members have reviewed those meetings and whether or not staff, how much they're going to require review of which meetings. So it seems to me I'm a little confused about how we go forward with this.
Okay, well, my intent was to try and streamline the review so we don't take as much time as if we were to start from scratch. But if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. The applicant is here looking for, you know, it's still listed as concept review, but I would hate to send them away without any information to work with at this point.
I agree.
So
I do too. I agree with you. It's just confusing as to how best to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I agree. I'm pulling up the minutes now, so I just didn't have these before. So now that I'm getting them, we can help the review. So please let me know if this looks familiar, because again, there are multiple PLNs and I am going through each one just to see if I can find them. But
yeah, our guidance through this process was not real clear the first time. So there was 402 South Hope.
Does this look familiar?
Yep, that's it right there. That's the service portico and everything except for there's going to be another one that had the electric vehicle building in it, and that's, you don't have that. This is the 20, so there's one in I think 21.
Okay, Mr. Ramsey, just give us a moment.
Okay.
We need to read through
No,
these.
no problem, not at all.
And while Mr. Russell is digging up what else he can find. Okay, so the motion, continue indefinitely, return to the full board, generally supportive of the proposal. Supportive of the development plan approval at a future hearing based on the floor plan being updated to address the gap between the two proposed tower elements. Applicant shall study removing the gap between the two proposed additions, which would enclose the tower element.
Yeah.
So this was, sorry, let me continue, please. So this was the project includes widening the driveway, new electrical vehicle charging stations, and partial demolition of the existing wall, and partial demolition of barricading and interior remodel. Okay. But there's no mention of the car charging structure in this one. Okay. Okay. So there's that.
If I may, the second part of this about the service building was May of 21. That might help you find those other minutes.
Right.
That's very helpful. Very helpful. Thank you. Mr. Russell, would it be helpful to take a break?
I
to
think
help
I
you find
found
that?
them.
You
I
got
believe
it?
it's right. Yes, got them right here. I think there's even another one as well. So I can pull these up. I believe there might even be another PLN record as well. So,
Okay, so this is the battery maintenance building. Trash enclosure. Okay. So you address the height in detail. We need to go back and look at the detailing to make sure it is the same. Designer should attempt to minimize the appearance of the addition in general. Any existing trees and landscaping shall be maintained and enhanced. So do you have
Mr. Chair.
in progress landscape plan or design or intent to go along with that?
No.
Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's focus on the battery charging building and try and get through that. So let's go back to that in the drawings. And in the meantime, Mr. Russell, if you could keep digging on your end. Okay. So for the benefit of any board members that weren't there, if the applicant could just orient us to the battery charging or electric vehicle maintenance building.
And if you look in between the BMW building and the Porsche service, you see that, you'll see the electric vehicle maintenance building. We want to go to the next page. I believe that would be, or I believe to the elevations, it would be on A230. So keep going. Right there you go. And if you, the elevations, just to see the detail on the elevations, that's that reveal line and on the similar column look on it, rather than being just straight flat plaster finish. And we've just kind of mimicked the column on there without creating, anything too obtruse, keeping it really plain looking. So it just kind of goes away. Because when you stand out the street and look in at it, it is I mean, everything's white in that area. That's everything you see is white. So through the trees.
Okay.
If you
Let
look
me
at
go
the,
to a quick photo, a quick look at the photo of the exterior of the existing building, so we can just verify the detailing is.
keep going.
Just, yeah, any photo of the exterior would be helpful.
And Mr. Chair, we're looking through this as well. I believe the 2 minutes that I pulled up are the most relevant to the project. So
Okay.
I don't believe I could not find any more. So I think what we have now is what.
Yeah, the BMW portion of it was, I think, probably back in 2016, the BMW Mercedes extension portion. So
We do have those minutes present as well, if you would also like to review those, Mr. Chair.
Okay, but let's get through this first. So we've got our
Okay.
photo there. If we could just jump back now to the elevations. Does any board member have a specific question about this portion of the project? Vice Chair Six.
Yeah, there can the applicant fur out it's obvious between the real photos and this edition and this proposal is that the real photos show a definite post and beam condition. And I think the intent was to have where this horizontal reveal line is, that the above a portion would be flush out with the column faces. So it truly expresses itself as a post and a beam and an inset panel. Is that doable by the applicant?
yeah, it's framed, but it's not, that can be done. So the top portion just would come out that this, I'm looking at the right now where it steps out, say 4 inches or whatever, have it go flush across the top. So it looks like the post and beam.
Yeah.
Get rid of the, that's fine.
I don't know whether other board members feel that way, but I think that was the intent.
I agree. That was the intent. So to match the detail of the existing. Okay, any other questions? No, okay. Any other comments? No, okay.
Is this comments on this building only, or the
Yeah, what I want to do is just try and break this down since there's so many parts. Let's do just a question and comment on each piece. That way we can keep it clear and concise. And I'll try and write down all the points that we're making.
I'm complete with this one.
Okay, anyone else? No?
No.
Okay, let's move on then to what's next on the list. And what do we have minutes for, I guess?
So help remind me, Chair Moore, we've gone through.
So that's the
2020 minutes.
Yes, I believe so.
And this one talked about, and then I believe these are the 2021 minutes for the electrical vehicle maintenance building.
Right, we just covered that.
And then we also have the 2016 minutes. I believe.
This is for just general exterior remodel.
Yeah, and that one did include the glass enclosing of that one roofed portico area in the front. But if you want to go to it and look at it, we can talk about it.
Okay. And this particular scope is part of the overall proposal now.
Just only the portion of the BMW. We ended up not adding a bunch of square footage to the Audi and BMW building. Spending the money, it was at that time. And so it didn't come up. And now the latest one was just enclosing that one area, just going back and enclosing that area.
Mr. Chair, we also have 2018 minutes. So 2016, 2018, 2020, and 2021 minutes, all available.
Okay. This was, this was a different proposal. This had to do with the metal skin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that
didn't move forward.
No, we wanted to know on that one.
Okay. So let's close that one. And this is 2016. And this is the enclosure of that corner.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's look at that then, if that's part of this application now.
Yeah, they wanted us to put everything as one on this application.
Okay.
So that all the square footage, the asking for the square footage allotment, and also the everything be all in one submittal.
Right. Okay. Well, let's look at that on the drawings now.
Okay.
You can direct us to that.
Go back to the floor plan. And right there in the lower corner. Oh, back one. Go back. Where that is, it's on the BMW building. It's in the lower corner in the front of the building. The columns, the glass, and everything are existing, and maybe the columns and the roof and everything are existing. We're just filling in the front glass and the two sides with doors so they can still move their display cars through, because there's a post-tension deck up there where they display all their vehicles. So the reason for the two doors is so they can still bring vehicles all the way straight through for display area. If you go back to the site plan, we'll show you that area.
And this is specific to the dark gray.
Yeah, it's right there. Yeah, if you zoom in right there, yes.
If I might, this mimics almost exactly what we did over on the Mercedes showroom that was pointed out earlier. It's what's called a handover base. We took an outside area. We filled in the areas with glass that uses the same mullion system. And so we just have a climate controlled area for people to take delivery of their new vehicles.
Okay, let's look at the elevations of that.
And that's this one right here.
Which one?
It's the lower bottom, the lower one. You see that there's existing and the proposed for each elevation.
Okay, and then there was an elevation above this.
It's the front. So you see the existing, it looks back to the existing glass line, and that's the new glass line.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Any questions regarding this piece?
Now, this is that remote little extension on the, what would that be? The ocean side of the building, correct?
Oceanside, Hitchcock side.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyone else's questions? If we scroll down to the bottom elevation there, is there, is there a reason the folding door isn't centered? Did you just bias that based on the mullion
No,
breakup?
so how it sets up on the inside. We can try to center a little more. It's just how it sets up with what's going on the inside when the car's in there and then giving it out. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd rather have it very obviously off center than a near miss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it's a small thing relative to the scale of the building and all that. Ideally, it would be either centered or on kind of that mullion typical mullion thing. I see what you mean. The existing one is a little off.
Yeah, and it just has to do with how the things line up on the inside. That, you know, there's really, I mean, you could a bunch of different ways to skin a cat, I guess. So.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm interested in other comments about this piece of the project. Any other board members with comments?
All the
Mr. Olson, go ahead.
So did the comments include references to landscaping on this particular aspect? There were comments to landscaping on previous things.
Yeah.
Yes,
I can tell you that during that one, it was a 3-phase submittal, you know, approval. We redid all the landscape, Arcadia Studios redid all the landscape around the entire building along the streets, and added landscape where stuff was dying as a part of when this was all going on. So we did address landscape. We addressed new driveway aprons at that time, stuff that was put on this project to do during that time. We went ahead and did.
Thank you.
So,
okay. So specific questions or comments about this little enclosed area? Any board member comments? Is it acceptable? Does it need further study? Vice Chair Six says it's acceptable.
It's acceptable.
Ms. Anderson?
I think it's acceptable. It looks like the existing glazing to the right of it. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on, if we could go back to the overall site plan, what is next? We've covered electrical vehicle maintenance building, BMW expansion. We've discussed the Porsche service portico. We've discussed the Porsche Edition, I believe. The purple.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess
it's a relocation of the trash enclosure. It was right where that electric vehicle building was set. and we moved it to that location. It looks exactly the same. It's a little tiny bit taller so that it makes sure that it covers the bin that's inside it.
Okay, let's go to that sheet. So if we can zoom in on the elevations, please. Okay. So it's plaster with little,
Small cap on the top. Yeah, it looks identical to what the other one looked like, except it's 8 foot instead of, I think it was before that the wall I think was at 7.6, and we just made it at 8, so that it definitely covers the bin that's inside it.
Okay. Okay, board member questions on this trash enclosure?
No question.
No question, no problem.
Nope. Good.
Any comments? I mean,
No
the existing area around it was landscaped or was paving?
It is some landscaping, some paving.
Okay, so existing landscaping will remain essentially around it. There's no plan to do anything else. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Does anyone have any other comments on that?
No, looks good.
Okay. Okay. What is next? Is there anything else at the Porsche additions that we didn't cover?
No, I think it's everything there.
Is there a landscape plan included?
There will be a landscape plan just for up in the planter areas where we have to redo some areas right up in the very front of that. We don't have that, and it's also going to be it's going to be requested from our meeting that we had earlier for the design review. And that'll be Arcadia Studios. They're just going to go and fill in what's missing or what needs to be taken care of.
And if I might, in 2018, when we did the expansion on the Mercedes showroom, we redid the landscaping on this entire piece of property up from Hope Avenue down Calle Rail, wrapping all the way around to Hitchcock. Arcadia did all that. So those plans are on file if you need them.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if we could go back to the project description just to make sure we hit everything, please. We're on the agenda description. Expansion to the BMW building, Mercedes building, trash enclosure. Great. Okay, are there any follow-up? I guess we should, I don't think we opened up public comment for this, did we, Mr. Russell?
I'm going to defer to Ms. Turnovoskaya. I don't believe we did.
I have written down that we did.
Okay, great. We'll move on from that. Okay. So any other follow-up questions for the applicant before we just list out our comments? Nope. Okay. So we can take question for Mr. Russell. We can take an action today, correct? Or is it still in the concept?
I believe we go back to, yeah, no final appealable decision will be made today. So just concept.
Okay, so unfortunately, we can give you a motion, but you'll be coming back to us. So I'll make a motion for continuance, indefinite continuance back to the full board with the following comments: that the board overall is happy with the direction of the proposed project. And the following comments are following regarding the new electric vehicle maintenance building. Please match the exterior detailing of the existing car dealership. Provide any proposed landscape plan for the area adjacent to this structure. Okay, for the phase 2 BMW expansion, the design is acceptable as proposed. Provide additional detailing for the door system and mullions system. Okay, and then on the Porsche service portico, Vice Chair Six, you had some comments and concerns regarding that.
Yes, I'd really like to have applicant study eliminating the open to above area of the portico, moving the column, the outboard columns of that structure to be between the queuing bays and the right-hand turn lane to the additional customer service area to shorten that span and make it compatible to the span adjacent at the, what is that? The purple area. What's that
Can we
called?
zoom in there?
It's the showroom.
Showroom.
Yeah. An entry.
If we could zoom in on that area.
Yeah, the.
Right. That's
make-
part of the, it's the service area. I'm sorry, service riders.
To make the Porsche I think I've said it.
Yeah. So you're essentially saying put columns here
Yes.
and remove this.
Yes. And if they need more breathing room to reduce the landscaping where that new plaster column is proposed back to the original existing curve or more.
Okay.
Or is it, maybe the general comment is to reconfigure the mouth of the queuing area and the right-hand turn lane.
Okay. So could we tighten that up to be study the new Porsche service portico to reduce the extent of the span?
Yeah.
That way it's leaves it a little bit open for them.
Okay.
Okay. Then moving on, I would say the new Porsche Edition area seems acceptable as proposed. Provide any exterior detailing for the typical mullion and door systems. Okay. Is that everything?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? No? Looks like we have a planner arriving. Any inputs?
Yes, Chair Moore, I'm Robert Dostler, case planner on the project. Just for clarification, is the board looking to see this project one more time before continuing it to the Planning Commission?
As agendized, there's no appealable action today. So if that's the next step, then we can change that, our motion to send it to the Planning Commission.
If the board is comfortable, that would help provide
okay,
clear direction for the applicant.
Okay,
if the
yes,
changes
so-
are minor enough.
Chair Moore,
Yes.
may I suggest that we could add another comment that it is ready for preliminary design approval? when
Okay.
it returns?
Yeah, assuming that they make the small adjustments that have been requested and provide the landscape plan. Okay. So let's amend the motion to say that we would make a motion to continue the project to the Planning Commission, and that the board, assuming the board feels that assuming the small changes are made to the design, that the project is ready for project design approval. And then with the comments that we've already made listed. Okay. Does that work for you, Vice Chair Six?
Yes. I support that as seconder.
Okay. All right, well then let's take our vote.
All right, I'll start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
You're muted.
I'm going to vote no because I don't support changes to the service portico.
All right, thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. What do we have next? So we are moving on to item 4. Just a little bit behind, but okay. This is 621 West Micheltorena Street. This is a continued item for concept review. This is a proposal to demolish the existing 2-story, 4,000 square foot medical and professional office building and construct a 3-story, 11,149 square foot medical and dental clinic for the Santa Barbara Neighborhood Clinics, new Westside Clinic. Second and third floors will be above a ground floor parking garage containing 11 parking spaces, including 1 ADA space and 12 bike spaces. The 10,285 square foot lot is located in the CR zone with a general land use designation of commercial, medium, high residential. Project requires Planning Commission review for the following applications: the conditional use permit, a development plan for a non-residential floor area, and a parking modification to allow fewer parking spaces than required. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. Project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis and the urban design guidelines. We last saw this July of 2021. Okay. Do we have anything from planning staff or our last motion that we can look at?
Mr. Chair, while we were doing that, I would like to reach out to the applicant, Ms. Allen, and ask, can you let me know who else would be a part of the presentation team today, or the applicant team?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mr. Russell. Well, myself, I have a very brief comment, and Brian Cornell will be presenting the architecture, and Courtney Miller will be presenting the landscape.
Okay.
Thank you. And then these are the minutes, Mr. Chair, from last time this item was reviewed. believe it was July 26, 2021.
Okay, continue indefinitely with comments. For the project as presented, it's difficult to make the project compatibility findings due to the existing neighborhood fabric. However, the overall height has been minimized to the greatest extent possible. Therefore, the project height is appropriate for the site. Massing needs continued study to further reduce the impact of the project on adjoining properties. The proposed exterior styling needs to be restudied to be more compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The city of Santa Barbara and urban design guidelines. Number 3, the transformer location shall be restudied and relocated to Almond Street and be screened. Number 4, there'll be a dedicated left turn lane going west on Mitchell Terrain Street, and the parking flow with entry on Mitchell Terrain Street and exiting on Almond Street is appropriate. It appears to be as efficient as possible. And then generally, we made the compatibility analysis findings, with the exception of, I guess we did not really make the compatibility analysis findings as a whole. Okay. Looks like we have Ms. Broderson with us as well. Do you have anything to add before we jump in?
Yes, good evening, ABR members. This is Kelly Broderson with Community Development, and I just wanted to say that the project has been designated as a community benefit project by City Council on March 3rd, 2020. And the ABR has seen this project 3 times for conceptual review. As you said, the last time was on July 26th. I also wanted to remind you that at the last meeting, we noted that this applicant team has been working with Public Works staff, and the applicant team developed a concept that includes a westbound turn lane into the site driveway. Public Works staff are satisfied that site access can be safely provided from Mitchell Terrain Street. Staff have also been working with the applicant team on the tree planting plan, and the existing bottle tree on the corner of Almond and Mitchell Terrain Streets is planned to be removed as part of an upcoming city capital project to accommodate new crosswalks on Mitchell Terrain Street. So Public Works supports the proposed tree planting locations, and the planting locations will not affect any critical safety sight lines. And that's all I have to add for today.
Okay, thank you. All right, so to the applicant team, go ahead and take us through your changes. Try and keep your presentation as succinct as possible so we have time for questions and comments. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to start out with a couple quick comments before Mr. Cornell gets into the changes. This is our 3rd concept review in front of the ABR. As Ms. Broderson noted, we have gone through the pre-application process, and we also have processed 1 30-day review. We are here before you to seek positive feedback as it relates to the project compatibility analysis. We were definitely focused on that last July, and I'm feeling pretty good that you're going to like some of the changes that Mr. Canero will walk you through. So we are seeking those criteria from you, and in order to move our project forward to the Planning Commission. So having said that, we're just about complete with that next application filing for staff review. Ms. Broderson will be looking at that maybe in about a week or so, and just really excited to move this project forward. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Cornell. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish. And with that, you guys have had plenty of time now to look at the building, and you're probably ready to get into comments, but let me give you a little bit more input. If we could zoom in, Mr. Russell, into the lower left there, the existing site plan, just to look at it, it's worth referring. And actually, I realized, by the way, that sort of gray overlay is what our existing pavement and transformer location is. So that's a little mistake, but at least it kind of helps you align and realize that really our first floor plan is pretty much this exact footprint. We just go over the top of it with buildings. So let's go to sheet number 2, to the photos. And just, I think it's good to have a quick little recap of where we are. Mr. Russell, maybe you could just start with number 1 and blow that up, and we'll just move across real quick. You guys ask about mountain views, and this really is the only point that you see the mountains. from San Andres, and you can see just in the background there the sort of hip roof, which is the roof of the existing building. So in terms of where the line of our building would be, where the hand is right there, we aren't going to block any mountain views. Let's just continue on down to number 2. You can see here there isn't any mountain view. And unfortunately, those trees, that tree that's right in the foreground, and then the tree in front of our site is being removed because of those improvements. Go on over to scroll to number 3. And this just gives you a good sense of, this is a 2-story building pretty much, you know, in the location for the most part of our building. So we can now jump to the next sheet, which is A100. Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Russell. Let's go back real quick just to photo number 7, which is in the middle at the bottom. These again are trees that are removed, which is a shame, but the Parks and Rec, by the way, had the eucalyptus and the jacaranda there. It was approved some time ago to remove those trees. Now we can go to the next sheet, which is the first floor plan, site plan. I think that you all are familiar with this, and as I said, it pretty much mirrors what's there on the site today. The good news is those street improvements are going in. We have a 10-foot setback minimum. We have planters that are helping us do our SWIMP standard, and we did move the transformer there onto Allman as the board requested from our last review. Next page. Second floor plan pretty much mirrors the first floor. We are set back off of our neighbor that's to the south. There's a little deck area over there for employees, and then there's a strip of planting that is at that second floor to help soften that side. Next sheet, third floor. The third floor, for massing purposes and neighborhood compatibility, is stepped in. And since you last saw this, what we've been able to do is to lower this parapet a little bit, but have green roof there. And since this is the dental clinic, this is going to just be a great little feature for these dental rooms to basically open out with large windows onto this green roof. Next page, please. This is the roof plan. Since we were here last, we actually have made the effort to do a schematic design of these mechanical units so we know what they are, at least schematically speaking. And that's really important, obviously, in terms of what we're going to see. Next sheet takes us to the elevations. And I'm not going to belabor these because they're elevations and never look as good as the views, but this is the basic massing, as you can see. And I want to point out, you know, you can see those mechanical units do appear to peek up over the mechanical screen. And I'm going to show you some views to illustrate that we do not believe those mechanical units are going to be visible from anywhere except an airplane. But from our last review, we basically have simplified this building and given it, you know, traditional proportions. There was a suggestion to create sort of a vertical element for that entry, which I think is successful. We have a very simple but you know, appropriate banding both at the top and at the second line of the second floor. And we've just greatly simplified it. The third floor element, we decided to clad in a material that we think will be appropriate and compatible to this neighborhood. Basically, we're using a similar horizontal siding that we used at Cancer Center, and then the screening at the roof will be some kind of a metal, you know, screen that will recede in terms of color. So I'm obviously looking at the Mitchell Terrena elevation there, the north elevation above, and then below is the Allman elevation. Let's go to the next sheet. Then the south elevation is next to our neighbor on Almond. So you can see that lowered parapet, which is going to have planting that will cascade over it. And Courtney can touch on what that planting is. But again, just using that very simple horizontal green siding. And then the view finally from the west, which I have some shots of as well. That would be the San Andreas side next to the hardware store. Next sheet, please. Sections, we can come back to these if you have any questions as far as our heights. Next page. So this is the rendering that we were looking at as Trish was making her introductory comments. The new trees, Courtney will talk about, but they're basically firewheel and olive there along Mitchell Terrena, and then we have some purple leaf plum that is along Almond. There's kind of grill work above the windows because that's interstitial sort of plenum space that has to be detailed, but the proportion of the openings is what really is important to us, and I'm sure that we'll study that more. It's hard to see. We have a little header detail to try to create the right proportion with those windows on the second floor. And we did lower from what you saw last, we lowered that main parapet element. But obviously the style is something that we think is compatible with our community and with this neighborhood. Next shot, please, next page. So this is looking from San Andres. Unfortunately, that big tree that is going to be taken out, we took out with Photoshop so that we were honest about what this view was. So we can see how the third floor element steps back. To be honest with you, I'd love to see a little mural on this wall, but we can talk more about that later. Next slide. So the view coming down Mitchell Terrena towards San Andreas and the massing of the building and the actual tree planting that's going to be there. Next page, please. And these little black and white are vignettes to basically show you that what you see from a mechanical screen standpoint. So these are just vantage points where we took, you can see in most of them, you can't even see the screen. And on the one from San Andres, you know, the mechanical equipment is not visible. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Courtney for the next two sheets. I'm guessing she'll want to go to the last sheet right off, which is the landscape plan. And then we will conclude our presentation.
Actually, no, we can stay here.
Yeah, this sheet. Right.
So, actually, could you go back to the tree protection plan, the prior sheet? And yeah, I just wanted to touch on, I think it's been mentioned before, but there's 3 existing street trees along Mitchell Terrena that will be removed. That's part of the street widening. So you can see here they're shown actually, you know, currently they're within the parkway, and then with the new design, you'll see on the following pages that they're within the street with the new road widening. And there's a new crosswalk being installed on the corner there as well. Jacaranda and the eucalyptus, actually 2 eucalyptus trees along Almond will be removed as well. Mostly due to the need for making that sidewalk straight again. And again, corresponding with the pedestrian master plan. All of those removals were approved at the Street Tree Advisory Committee in December, and then following that, the Parks and Rec Commission. So we have the support for those removals. Replacement species are, you know, per the urban forest superintendent. And on Almond, I think there was a comment from Parks and Rec. They're looking for something with kind of a larger canopy. So you'll see we have the purple leaf plum indicated for the parkway tree along Almond. That's that purple symbol. Those are pretty small, and a lot of the street trees that are, you know, part of those designations haven't been revisited in decades. So we may take a look at that and propose something else in coordination with Nathan Slack. And then otherwise for the plant palette, we're trying to keep it very simple and textural. I love the green color in the building, so we're kind of trying to play with that in the landscape. And we have olive trees proposed for both the Mitchell Terrena and Almond Avenue elevations, and those will do a really nice job of kind of playing with the color palette on the building and having a nice dappled canopy that will address, you know, shading in the street and also form a nice canopy in relationship to the building. We have screening indicated around the transformer. That was just a comment from our DART. And otherwise, I think we added a little bench along Almond Avenue. It's kind of in a funny location on the plan. Needs to be pushed back towards the building, but you'll see on the bottom right hand of the plan here, there's a little image of what we had in mind for that bench, just under the reference images of the plant.
And Courtney, I should mention that that's a loading area there that we're putting in, since a lot of our parking is going to be off-site. We have a loading zone there right on Almond that has been reviewed with Public Works so that we have good, easy access for people using the van transport between the remote lot.
Yeah, and actually, if you could zoom in on that area along Almond, we can look at that real quick because it is somewhat unique. We just, we have a loading zone, as Brian mentioned, that's that diagonal striped zone that you typically see at hotels or, you know, medical buildings. And so you know, somebody would pull up in a car along Almond Avenue, and then this is an accessible way for somebody to access the sidewalk. So that would be ramped where the little detectable warning dots are shown.
And Courtney, if you could just touch base on that, the second floor planter also that's along that south, that we need to scroll to that.
Yeah, of course. So if you want to scroll down, we have the second floor shown. We have a planter along the south side there. Just lots of different layers going on in that planter. And then we have a couple of vine species proposed, both of which are self-clinging. So those can grow down and cover the wall really nicely. And I think we have an image of one of those just to the right, the upper right image in the planting. And otherwise, we do have green roof panels proposed. As Brian mentioned, we included a detail for that. It was a comment, again, from our DART process. But we're looking at using the live roof product, which we've used on a number of projects around town. It's a pre-grown module that is, you know, just sets in place with a 4-inch soil profile that can support things like sedums and grasses, succulents. I think that's it, unless Brian has anything else.
Nope, I think that's it.
That I missed.
Thank you.
And happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we can open public comment. If anybody out there in the public would like to address the board regarding this project, you can raise your hand by following the instructions on screen, and that will alert staff that you would like to make a comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So if any member of the public would like to speak on this project, please raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak and I can call on you. All right, so I can see Sheila Lodge has raised their hand. Sheila Lodge, I will go ahead and send you an unmute request and you will have 2 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you. This is Sheila Lodge speaking as an individual. I think the new plan is a considerable improvement over what was proposed early last year. And I rather like the first 2 floors. but I am puzzled by the third floor. It doesn't seem to relate either to the first two floors in style or feel or color or design elements. And it doesn't relate to the neighborhood either. It may be a kind of finish that has been used elsewhere, but it just seems quite inappropriate in this location. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else?
All right, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So at this time, I can see Alex Franks has also raised their hand. So Alex Franks, I will send you an unmute request and you should have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, thank you. I just have a few really quick comments, probably less than 2 minutes. I really appreciate all the effort that went into the new materials from the previous meeting. That said, I do, as someone who lives in this neighborhood, I do have strong reservations about the elevation from San Andres Street. The scale of the proposed building next to the hardware store is pretty extreme. There's little articulation along that elevation, and so that's where my remaining concern is. So that's really all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else?
All right, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So at this time, I can see one more person has raised their hand. Charles Fenzi, I will go ahead and send you an unmute request and you should be able to speak.
Chair Moore, members of the board, good afternoon. Thank you again for accommodating us. I'm Chuck Fenzi, the CEO and CMO of Santa Barbara Neighborhood Clinics. As this is our third trip before you, I don't want to belabor the idea of the need, but I thought it might be helpful to you to hear some numbers that illustrate that point. As you may know, the total population of the West Side is defined by zip code 93101 is 31,371. 12,620 of those are considered to be low income, living at 200% or below the poverty level. 9,488 are patients that are currently being cared for by the safety net. 5,322 of those patients are under our care at the West Side Clinic. That leaves 3,142 that do not list a medical home. In addition, 1,400 of our patients travel to the east side for their dental care. The provision of integrated services, including medical, behavioral health, dental services under one roof, will substantially increase efficiency and access to the folks living on the West Side. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anyone else?
All right, thank you, Chair Moore and board members. So at this time, I don't see any more hands raised and we didn't receive any written correspondence for this item. So with that, I'll turn it over back to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment. Go to questions from the board. Who would like to start? Mr. Whalen.
One small reminder question, Mr. Kernal. What is the material of construction on the first floor, specifically on the two walls that lie on the lot line?
Plaster.
It's a framed plaster wall, not concrete nor
Well,
CMU.
No, the walls on the property line will be CMU with plaster. Yeah.
CMU with plaster. Thank you. That's the only question I had.
Okay, Mr. Olson.
Yes, as to the third floor and Ms. Lodge's comments, I was also a little bit wondering why you chose, maybe you could tell us a bit about why you chose horizontal siding and painted it green?
Well, this is, you know, the image of this for me is that the two-story building, you know, has a feel that it's been there for a long time, and the third floor, at least conceptually, was built at a later point. It's very hard to make this third floor plaster and not have it be more massive. To make it Spanish Colonial Revival makes it more massive. And to me, you know, this simple sort of warm material, which again, I think was used very successfully at the Cancer Center, is just a comfortable material that allows for larger openings, which is ideal for that dental facility on the third floor. And it kind of tells, you know, this you know, theoretical story that these are different times, that these are different buildings. You know, that's what the feeling is, and I think it helps. The horizontal helps to keep it, the scale of it, a little lower, and I think the color tends to make it recede as well. So that's what the thinking was.
Thank you.
Okay.
I wonder also if you considered more detail on the entry there, the front entry. It seems like it's a little blank to me.
Well, you know, to be honest, I wanted it to be kind of humble and simple. I mean, you know, obviously we could have more ornament on it, and as this evolves, you know, certainly we could study that, you know, but I'm really just showing the touches that matter, and I'm not sure how much more I would want to do with it. I mean, there is something humble about this service, you know, that is being provided in this building. And so, you know, that's sort of my feeling, but I'm sure there's a lot of work that we can do.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, Vice Chair Six.
Yeah, to Mr. Cornell, to continue on the discussion of this horizontal siding on the third floor. Does the Cancer Center have finesses? Is this a shiplap or a?
Yes, this is a shiplap.
Shiplap.
Yeah, this is shiplap.
And the Cancer Center, do they have any other finesses at the corners or the
well, I mean, the
cornice or whatever.
I mean, the Cancer Center has a roof with rafter tails, you know, that surround it, and it also, you know, as an element, actually, this material is on the first and second floor, and then the third floor we changed to a vertical, you know, brown vertical siding. So, you know, that's obviously it's a different architectural expression, but the same material.
Well, it's kind of, the Cancer Center is kind of recessed and framed by an overhang or in other materials at the corners, correct?
Yes, which I, you know, considered here and would still be open to that idea. I was concerned that it added to the mass of the building. But, you know, frankly, we did toy with, and I'm not completely, you know, indisposed to the idea of some kind of a little detail that speaks of an overhang with, you know, maybe rafter tails or something like that for some shadow.
Okay, thanks. I noticed on the sections that these windows were not fully recessed to the back faces of the surface of the interior walls, especially at third floor. Is that your intention, or are you flushing them out with the exterior surface?
Well, no, I mean, obviously on the first and second floor, it's critical that we get deep recessed windows with the plaster detailing. At the third floor, I think it just could be the way that it ended up being drawn. I haven't thought a lot about that. But certainly there's nothing that would prevent us from recessing those windows back in the wall.
Okay. And then well, let's just discuss it in questions. Can we go to probably the best would be the rendering at the San Andreas. Yeah, there you go. You know, did you consider, well, first of all, just a comment, I like the idea of the mass over the garage entry being, you know, very complementary in color and warmth and plaster to the existing shopping center. But that little, did you study, in a question, phrase this in a question, did you study taking that same color and material and using it for that little second floor outrigger at the employee break room?
Oh, you mean instead of it being the siding being plaster?
Stop and start.
You know, we did. And again, I don't know that there's a right or wrong. So, you know, I could certainly see that, you know, especially as I look at this, you know, if you had that as a plaster element that was proud in one direction or the other.
Yeah.
We had it that way and I changed it and, you know, it could easily change back.
Okay. And then there's a very aggressive, just a curious, not critical, but there's a very large aggressive canopy, canvas awning on around the corner on that same form. Is that large because of some particular reason?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Let's go to the elevations, the drawn, the hard line elevation.
The sheet 7. Yeah.
Down sheet maybe. Yeah. See.
You're talking about just the little marquee canopy over the entrance?
No, that one right there in the back. That's huge.
Oh, yeah, that's a mistake. You're absolutely right. It's so big it goes over the property line. So yeah, I guess that would be, let's look at that on sheet 8. Yeah, I will be honest with you. I think this is a holdover that we didn't, you know, that was from the previous, but yeah, that can definitely, there's no reason that that's like there like that.
All right. And then my last question is to Courtney, the choice of trees around the frontages, it's my understanding that olive trees are very slow growing and don't become considerable masses to soften the elevations of the building very well until years and years and years. Can you explain your selection of that tree type? And if I'm incorrect on the variety of olive, please correct me.
Thanks for that question. I think we use the fruitless variety of olives, and we use them quite often for everything from street trees to parking lot trees. They have a beautiful canopy. And in terms of the growth rate, I think, you know, it'd be similar to most of the other canopy type trees, with the exception of maybe a sycamore. Those are the kind of the fastest growing trees, but happen to be medium water use, so we can't use those for something like this. But I think if you're looking for, you know, how they address, you know, the mass of the building, I would point you to Olive Street, and in particular, the blocks around, I think, Cannon Perdido. I mean, the olive trees there are just really striking. They're huge, and they grow up and out. And, you know, we've had this comment before, but we love these trees. They're, you know, the color is beautiful. The canopy is not overly dense. They don't take a lot of maintenance.
So
that's why we chose it.
So you're confident that they will become sizable?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay. Ms. Anderson.
Can we go to the second floor plan, please? I noticed that there was one mechanical unit on the west. Is that west?
Yeah.
Is there any opportunity to put that on the roof?
Well, I think that is a little bit of a holdover. I'm not sure we even know what that piece is. So it's sort of a reservation for a possible little small condenser or something like that. But yes, to answer your question, I believe that we can do everything up on the roof. That's certainly the goal.
Okay. And then is there any opportunity also along the side to possibly include a planter or more of the green roof?
Yes.
And then one other question along that same elevation, or along that same second and third story on that same elevation. Is there any opportunity to study programmatically a way to break up the second and third story? I know Mr. Six mentioned changing the material and part of it. Is there also an opportunity programmatically to break it up? Or is it pretty?
I'm not sure. I mean, I certainly, you know, just been sketching here Mr. Six's idea of doing the plaster element for that, what is the employee lounge, which, as we can see on this elevation that we're looking at on the south elevation, it sort of mimics what is the stair tower that's along the Almond Street side. So I think that is a really good suggestion. I think actually having that plaster be proud and overlap that third floor, similar to what it does on the left side there along Mitchell-Torrena, that would be, I think that would do a lot of work. Mm-hmm. As far as the third floor, this building is already structurally complicated enough just by stepping the third floor back. And I really think that third floor should just be as simple as it can possibly be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Those are my questions.
All right. Anybody else? Questions? No? Okay, great. Let's go to comments then. Who'd like to start? Mr. Olson, go ahead.
Yes. Could we go back to the perspective from the front elevation? So after looking at this for a while and thinking more about what you had said about your reasoning for using that, I come completely around to think this is quite successful. I do believe that's a good solution to that top story. I think as we move around the building, and now we've been talking about that with the last couple of comments here, is that's where I begin wonder whether or not there isn't some way to introduce another siding, and I think you have mentioned that, so I'd support that as we move around the building. That's
Okay.
all my comments.
All right, thank you. Mr. Six?
Yes, I think for the most part, the applicant has done a great job in addressing our concerns, and I think that simplifying this direction is a great improvement from the first time we saw it. And I, in general, support what's going on here. I do believe that the third story with its shiplap siding it just doesn't, I know what you're trying to do here, but I think that same material or like material can be used in a very, do a lot of finessing of corners or the way, even the way it's applied, whether it's gaps instead of shiplap, it's gaps and, organized expansion joints or whatever. A lot of small scale finesse could be applied to this material to make it much more successful without adding busyness or drawing attention to itself. And I think that perhaps there's finesse, a little detailing, a slight little eyebrow or whatever on each of the windows, some kind of finesse at the corner, maybe the corners, I don't know, but at the cornice line. So I think that this material could be used much more successfully with small scale finesses. I mentioned going back to the plaster at that break room projection of the green siding on the second floor. I think that that would frame all four corners of the green box above successfully. That plaster would not go all the way continuous the second floor, but stop at some agreeable vertical joint, slightly overlapping the corner of the southwest corner of the green box, third floor. I also think, it occurs to me that the window, as I mentioned, I think that part of that finesse could be that the windows on the third floor should be recessed as much as possible to bring shadow lines. And I'm wondering if on this elevation, you've turned to your more modest double hung windows on this elevation. I wondered if, I think that the first two double hungs are another like functioning room. I wonder if those could have the proportions and elegance of the other, the north and east elevation, and perhaps, just to make those four windows across there a little more finessed rather than humble. The ones on the second floor, I don't mind because they're much more out of the way and so forth. I think that you mentioned that you couldn't see the slight recess in the header at the second floor of Mitchell Terrena elevation, perhaps that's where you pick up the green color or the alternate color of the box above to kind of tie things in. But other than that, I think I think it's very much going in the right direction and a very good solution to a very large program on a difficult site. That's the end of my comments.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Anderson, go ahead.
I won't add too much. I just really appreciate the presentation, and I think with the attention to the detailing of the fenestrations on all the levels and the different materialities that they interact with, I think will bring this project to the next level, and especially paying attention to the detailing on this view that we're looking at right now. I think we'll keep this from looking like an apartment building and more like the clinic that it is. That's it.
Okay, Mr. Black?
I don't have much to add except that I think it's a very handsome project. You know, I live on the west side myself. I drive by here several times a day. And, you know, I just think it's going to be a real addition to the neighborhood. I think people are going to want to, we're going to have to get used to the scale of it. But I think, you know, as handsome as it is, I think people really appreciate it. And to the point about the olive trees, you know, I would agree with Courtney. I think, you know, I think they will be it's a good choice. And also we can ask them to plant larger sizes too. I mean, there are large box size olive trees that will have an initial impact that I think maybe some of the board members would be looking for. So I think the landscape is generally very thoughtful and will be successful. Those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Oh, Mr. Whalen, go ahead.
Sure, not to reiterate too many of the other comments that I support, but I do have some reservations about the color and the material on the third floor. However, I do think, with that said, it's headed in the right direction. Some sort of shadow line at the cap would seem appropriate. Deeper windows, something to bring out those qualities. On this view, though, that large wall of the second floor seems to me could use some articulation. I know it's on the property line, but a false alcove or something to add a little bit of shadow interest. And I might say the same thing about the south-facing wall for the neighbor that hopefully will be covered with vines. It seems like that wall is extremely brutal and harsh to the humble neighbors next door, and some sort of articulation, whether it's in alcoves or if it were even exposed CMU that had different colors and patterns in it would be called for. It's a very handsome project from the street scale. I'm not sure that the glazing is appropriate. That might work on the other buildings in the neighborhood. I'm not sure how it's appropriate it is. Even for the conference room, it seems to me that you're just going to put up drapes anyway. I'm just not understanding that completely. The transformer did move, but now it's less than 10 feet from that humble building next door. I have reservations about that. The mechanical screen on top of the third floor, that view shows that it's going to disappear, which sort of answers my question. It doesn't look too attractive in the strict elevations, but if it disappears, I suppose there's nothing more to be said about that. I think the garage opening could use a little more articulation, such as a recess or a framing. Seems rather stark. I like the general approach Mr. Kernal has taken with the first and second stories of it, very humble. Mr. Olson, I believe it was mentioned that the entry facade could use a little more pronouncement, but these are just small adjustments to a design that is well underway and that I can support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My comments align with Vice Chair Six's. I think if the applicant is successful in that area, I think then the project will also be a success. So look forward to the continued development of that. All right, so Mr. Russell, and what action are we allowed to take today? Is this a non-appealable, or is this an appealable action, or non-appealable?
I believe this is a no final appealable decision will be made at this hearing.
Okay.
But I do defer to Ms. Brodesson.
Great.
Good afternoon, board members. Kelly Brodesson again, Associate Planner with Community Development. And I just want to say this project will continue through the development review process. It will proceed to Planning Commission. And once Planning Commission does their discretionary review, it will return to ABR for further review, PDA details, and final approval.
Okay, so would an appropriate motion be to continue it to Planning Commission?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, would somebody like, it sounds like we're in alignment. Would somebody like to make that motion? Vice Chair Six.
Yes, I'll make a motion for indefinite continuation to the Planning Commission with the following comments: that the board is in support of the direction and design of the building, and its design does its best to mitigate the mass and scale of the building at this location. The board, and number two, the board would like to see more refinement, either different material or finesse of the material chosen for the third floor, giving more detail, shadow lines, articulation to the way the material is applied, articulation to perhaps to more shadow lines at the window openings. I already mentioned the eaves. That on the, then another comment on the West San Andreas, that it's suggested that the extension on the second floor, the extension of the employee break room be changed to an alternate to the same material as the mass above the Mitchell Terrena garage entry, in order to more appropriately frame and to frame the third floor. And on that same elevation, to restudy the third floor west elevation windows to be more sophisticated in their proportions, more like the north and east third floor windows. That one board member would like to, is concerned of the mass of the, at the property line on the west elevation above the Mitchell Traina garage opening to have some shadow line or articulation of that wall plane. And as well as consideration of some detailing or articulation of the first floor wall mass along the south first floor elevation as it on the property line to the residential neighbor to the south. Several board members would like to see more detail, slightly more detailing at the front entry facade and at the Mitchell Traina garage opening. I think that's it. If anybody would help me.
Okay.
I'd second that motion.
Thank
Chair-
you.
Chair Moore and Board Member 6, this is Kelly Broderson. Just a quick note to those little compatibility findings that we always need to include in the motion.
Okay.
As a good form of communication to the Planning Commission.
So, Ms. Broder, are we formally making these compatible, or I think what we have called it in a preliminary way we find? Is that the way we want to phrase it?
Yes, you're communicating to the Planning Commission that you have considered these compatibility findings and find the project consistent with them.
Okay, so in a preliminary way, preliminarily, the board finds that the project meets the compatibility findings, that the project is consistent with the guidelines of the location within the project sits. Number two, it is compatible with the architectural character of the city and the neighborhood, given the materials and forms used. Number three is it is of appropriate mass, bulk, height, and scale, given the site constraints and size of program, and have been mitigated as best that can be with the design presented. There are no sensitive adjacent landmarks or historic resources. There are no, number five, there are no public views of the ocean or mountains that are affected. And there is use of open space and landscaping, given the setbacks from the street and the green roofs and planters on other floors.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? No. We should probably have that read back to us.
Thank you.
All right. Give me one. So the
Now,
motion.
What did I say, Mary?
So the motion was to continue the project to Planning Commission with the following comments. Number one, the board is in support of the direction and design of the building. The design does its best ability, or it does its best to mitigate the mass and scale of the building at this location. Number two, the board would like to see more refinement in either a different material or finessing of the material chosen for the third floor to provide more detail, shadow lines, articulation to the way the material is applied, and articulation to the shadow lines at the window openings. Number three, to the west, it is suggested that the extension.
Mary, we can stop and we'll go back to, I think you mentioned the shadow lines at the windows twice. I think that we should say, suggest shadow lines at the cornice instead of 2 times at the windows.
Okay. So I have articulation for the way the material is applied, articulation for shadow lines at window openings and the cornices.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so next, number three, to the west, it is suggested that the extension of the employee break room on the second floor be changed to the same material as the mass above Mitchell Terrena garage entry in order to appropriately frame the third floor.
You can drop at all of that secondary stuff. Just end it at the mass above the
Okay.
Terrena garage, yeah.
All right, and then continuing with that comment on the same elevation, restudy the third floor west elevation windows to be more sophisticated in proportions like the north and east third floor windows.
Yes.
All right, number four, one board member is concerned with the mass at the property line on the west elevation above the Mitchell Terrena garage opening, provide shadow lines or articulation of the wall plane, give consideration to some detailing or articulation of the first floor wall massing along the south elevation first floor as it relates to the neighbor to the south.
That should be, those two should be separated by an and. Also consider articulation or whatever on the south wall.
Okay.
Yes.
So number five, some board members would like to see slightly more detailing at the front entry facade and at the Mitchell Terrena garage opening. And number six, the board preliminarily made comments regarding the project compatibility analysis.
All right, I think that's it.
Approval from the second.
Okay, thank you. Let's take our vote.
All right, so I'll go ahead and start with Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, so
Okay.
the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and I believe that is our last item for the evening. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
It is. So we can adjourn our meeting for 2/22 of 22. Thank you very much, everybody.
Hey, right.
And Mr. Black, is it sunset time yet?
About another hour or so.
All right. Well, we can't wait around till then. So
Aloha.
we'll see you guys
Thank you.
later. Have a good
Yeah,
night.
thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha.